Amjad Abu Hilal is going to be our next speaker. Teacher educator at Queen Rania Teachers Academy, a module led for practicum module facilitating students' practical work in partnering schools and e-learning managers. Well, having 25 plus years of experience in one of Jordan's high-level international school, holder of master's degree in geochemistry and geochemical engineering. Let's go ahead and welcome Amjad Abu Hilal on board.
Good evening or good morning in other places. My name is Amjad Abu Hilal. I am from Queen Rania Teacher Academy. Today we'll be talking about smart schools, and I was inspired for this title because this is actually the logo and the title of this summit. One of the things that we have to think about, was the smart school term used as a response to COVID-19, or is it actually a futuristic education perspective? If you have any reply to this particular question and you've been wondering about it, I would appreciate it if you just add it to the chat so we can continue from there. Now, we're going to, please, I would like to ask you to use this site that I have over here, this link, which is www.menti.com, and this is the code. What we will be asking you to do is that to reflect on this sentence. It says that with the fourth industrial revolution on the horizon, investment, not just in technologies, but in people who understand technology is essential. What do you think about this particular statement? Please, we'll take 4 minutes so you can go to www.menti.com. Enter the code that you can find right now on the screen, and then please answer. We need to find the replies coming over here. As you can see, we will have in here, you go to www.menti.com and you enter the code, which is 20742086. Once you start writing, you will be able to see your replies on the screen right in front of you. I don't know if we face some problems in entering this, but one of the things we need to think of when we think about smart schools, we have to think about, is it actually a response? And that response, did it come to accommodate for the fourth industrial revolution skills? Or is it something that is there and needs to move on? Another thing we also need to think of when we talk about technology, do we empower the people to use that technology? Or we just assume that it is just comes on by default. Now, after actually talking about futuristic review of using technology, we need to think of the following. Literature and lots of resources suggest that we need to be future-oriented. What does it mean to become future-oriented? Being future-oriented means that you are an adaptable person, agile in thinking, flexible to new technologies and to new ways of teaching. You will be able to adopt more complex views of the knowledge. And the most important thing, not just to know things, but how I can incorporate that knowing into doing and being. Alongside this, we also need to think how to use our ideas, how to implement them in current situations, and how to make use of current situations to produce a new terminology or a new future for all of us. Actually, we were prepared here to prepare another Mentimeter, but apparently we faced few problems. I don't know if this is actually working with us. I don't know if the support team could help in actually producing or checking if others are not being able to see the or to enter the link itself. Anyhow, we will continue with this. One of the things, if I am future oriented, and I do understand that some of integrating technology into education came as a response to the sudden closure that we had. If we just simply try to reflect on how education was before COVID-19 and the sudden transformation into technology, and to the future that we have right now. So if I may explain over here, let's take a look at what we have here. The teacher is the center of the classroom. The teacher is the source of information. She produces whatever visual aids she can provide her students with. And as you can see, the students are sitting side by side, physically and in the same place. What happened afterwards is that the learners themselves became a little bit more exposed to other resources to provide them with knowledge. We have the laptops and desktops. We have even books. And we might think that we have audio kind of resources. All of these, does that make a difference? What do you think? Is this a future of education, or that future of education actually changed into being a more smarter or more technology-based form of education? This is a question we all have to bear in mind, because if we're going into technology, are we able to actually work with that challenge, the challenge of being technology literate to help our students learn more? Now, after we went into COVID-19, there were 3 phases that we went through, and those 3 phases were as follows. First, we have a phase which is a disruption. Schools were going on very smoothly and everything was going on very well. And then students used to wake up in the morning, go to their schools, listen to their teacher, take their homework, do their examinations, study with their books, and everything done perfectly. There was a sudden disruption. Schools were disrupted. There was closure. So what was the alternative? The alternative was actually to quickly move into the second stage, which is a transition into education technology and the moving into integrating technology into education. Was it really expected from way before? Some schools, yes, they did actually integrate technology into their education. Their students were kind of adapted to using technology. But the majority of schools and the majority of the education sectors, even at universities, were not very well exposed to that form of education. That means it was kind of an informal education. It was let's say an additional part, but it was not the major part. After the closure, there had to be the main way of delivery or the modality of learning was through online learning. Now, lots of schools came back and the students went back to their schools. They were physically present. Now, being physically present, does that mean they will forget about the 2 years that they spent at home studying as remote learning? How can I reimagine kind of the learning that's happening right now? Are the students still able to use a book and a copybook and a pen? Or they're still thinking technically about stuff? Where is the technology that we ask them to train on? Where is it? When I asked them a long time ago, please use your mobile to study. Now we ask them, please don't use your mobile. Isn't there a contradiction? So over here, it's about time to reimagine how the education would be. We have to understand something, that technology and online learning with blended learning are here to stay. It is kind of a sustainable kind of education. We are not saying that we're going to drop the part of physical presence, but technology in education is a must right now because our students are really interested in this. They like the way it's doing. It's self-paced. It catered for all differentiation and different abilities and understanding. So we can see over here that in order for education to succeed beyond the classroom, we must connect learning to life beyond the classroom. And this is a very important thing, that what happens inside the classroom should be sustained and maintained. It should be relevant to their daily lives. It should be clear to what they're supposed to be doing. Now, this statement that we have over here would make us think of something. What is the purpose of learning? Why am I learning? How am I learning? This is very important. It has to be communicated with our students. It was previously communicated when there was a transition into remote learning, but is it still communicated when the students are back? We have to consider this part. So that leads us to understand what we mean by smart schools. When we say smart schools, were smart schools actually only founded post-COVID, or was it there some time ago? We have to understand that when talking about smart schools, we're actually talking about technology-based teaching. It's learning institution that prepares children for the information age. If you recall the first statement I started out with when we talked about we have the technology, but did we empower people to use that technology? This is actually smart schools. Smart schools say that we have technology, and in that technology, we have lots of applications and apps that will help the students to learn. This teaching and learning that we have over here using technology, did we empower the teachers to use it? Did we empower the students to use them? So this is something that we have to bear in mind. So smart school is an alignment between the technology that is now found and the empowerment of schools to use that. So when talking about these schools, we stick to our traditional curriculum. We didn't change the curriculum, but we changed the introduction of the information. There was some kind of dissemination of information using technology. Why should we have smart schools? This is a question so many people ask about. We know that remote learning or online learning, that we have pros and cons, and we have people that were with, others that were against. But when it comes to think about smart schools combines the people that agree with online learning with the people that do not agree with online learning. We put them in a point, which is a connection point. We call them smart schools, which is we can integrate the technology within a physical schooling. Smart schools, they help us to learn. Learning should include deep understanding involving flexible, active use of knowledge. It's very important over here. If you've noticed so far, we've been using the word knowledge, not if I know how to do things, but it's the usage of knowledge. How much do we agree that students should use the knowledge? It's not about gaining knowledge. It's about using the knowledge and using it perfectly. The other idea, why do we have smart schools? Because learning is a consequence of thinking. And good thinking is learnable by all students. When we say consequence of thinking, that means, is there a rationale for learning? Why are you here? Why do we teach math? Why do I teach language? Why do I teach history? Why should students know at what temperature the water boils? All of these things, when making sense of what the students are learning, this is called smart schooling. Because if the student wants to know, why am I learning this? That student could refer to, for example, sources, giving them the rationale of learning. It gives them, why am I doing it? Where am I going to apply it? Is it applicable, for example, in daily context? Is it applicable when I go beyond the classroom? Once they leave the classrooms and they go home, is there a sustainable learning coming afterwards? And I think this is something we also have to consider at all times. So how do you make your school smart? This is a very important question. Does it mean I have to go and start building a new school? Is there something new about my school? No. Smart school classes can be technology-driven and learner-centric with a teacher as a facilitator. Well, in the past millennium, we did talk about learner-centered classrooms. But what does it mean to have a learner-centered classrooms? Do you think that learner-centered is that to ask a student to talk during the lesson? Does the student have an impact on his classmates? Do I make the student responsible for his or her own learning? Do I have a sustainable education when the student leaves the classroom? Does the student know what they're learning? This is what we mean by learner-centric. Learner-centric means that the student is responsible for his own learning. That student is a lifelong learner. That student has the autonomy and the ownership over his own learning. When I make the student responsible for his own learning, that student will actually drive the learning cycle that he puts for himself and is actually guided by his teacher. That's why the teacher is a facilitator. The teacher is not the one who gives the information. The teacher is the person who actually guides the student how to make use of the learning and how to make use of the knowledge acquired and in what way. Now, making use of this is technology driven. We have to make use of the technology, whether we like it or not. Our students are more technology literate than we are. They're more digitally literate than we are. So why don't we make use of that? Why don't we ask them to search and then share their information? Why don't we ask them, for example, to guide the lesson in one of these days? This is what makes a school quite smart. Teachers have better teaching tools to effectively engage learners. We have to know that when talking about technology-driven classrooms, in here, teacher can actually bring the information and its applicability into the classroom. For example, if I want to keep a certain chemical experiment, and I know there are some kind life-risking hazards due to that chemical experiment. Instead of just talking about it and drawing it on the board, for example, there are so many things I can do. I can refer to virtual labs, for example, where the students can see the experiment happening and you can stop and ask the students, what will happen next? What if I do this? What if I do that? So the interaction over here is to take the information from the students because they can see and they can feel what's going on. Virtual classrooms, they allow students some more freedom to crease, experiment, explore, and steer the class. Over here, we said it's a learner-centric, which means the learners are the ones that actually rule the learning process. They have the freedom to go sit in a corner and search. When I have, for example, a group work, I can provide the groups with a laptop. I can provide them with, they can take their mobiles out and they start searching for the problem that I gave them. They can come up with replies. They can share their replies with the classmates and they can have a debate based on literature based. Where did they get that from? They got it from technology because it's available and at hand. How do I create smart schools? We have to acknowledge that schools as a learning organization, it's a whole learning body. That school, generative knowledge, it's a place where we generate the knowledge because definitely you have to know that we are not actually eliminating the role of the teacher. The teacher guided the student where to find the knowledge and how to find it. Learnable intelligence. Well, nowadays, and I think you will all agree with me that when we talk about learnable intelligence, we cannot do not prejudge your students that they're smart or not. Learnable intelligence comes with how well do I train my students to think and adapt to new changes. This is called learnable intelligence. Where do I use my learning? How do I apply it? We focus on understanding. Please, this is a very important thing. One of the major things we learned from school closure and COVID-19 is that we concentrate on skills acquired, not knowledge based. We take the knowledge, but if I don't understand it, I will memorize it for a very short-term span, and then I will not make use of it. So if I know what skill is being produced from that knowledge, it means that knowledge has changed into understanding, and understanding something make it sustainable learning. Teaching for mastery and transfer. So when I teach my students, I ask them, why are you learning this? Where will you apply it? How can you show it to your classmate? Can you please sit with your colleague and explain it to them in your own words? If you see that that cycle is going on so smoothly and students do not hesitate to pass on the understanding, it means you did teach for mastery. Learner-centered assessment. It's something, the word assessment is the biggest nightmare any educator could go through. Many educators said, I do not feel that the grades I got from the assessments are reliable. Well, they can be. Right? Do you know how we can do it? We can do it because if I concentrate on assessing the skills acquired and not the knowledge, if I assess how much skill was actually retrieved from a knowledge, you would know and you would be very confident that the grades that you got for your assessment are reliable. Go for capstones, go for assessment for learning. Remember that you can always have interactive applications where you have, just like the ones we had, you can also have portfolios. Ask your students to prepare their portfolios. And for example, at the end of each month, you ask your students, can you please show me the portfolio and explain the contents? This is when you have it as learner-centered. They will feel the autonomy, the ownership of their learning. So they will give you the portfolio at its best form. Embracing complexity. So many different stuff going around them. So they take, for example, students learn different disciplines. They take Arabic, they take English, for example, they take maths, sciences with all of its streams, they take arts, they take PE, they take religion, they take social studies. How can they make use of all of these? This is a whole complex situation. There are new approaches that can do that, which is, for example, when we produce or use, for example, STEAM approach. STEAM is an interdisciplinary. When you do use that interdisciplinary approach, you embrace all the complexity of these topics and you put them all in one place. And therefore, when the student is able to just simply put all of these ideas in one place and make it clear for him how and why and what they're learning, this is when I achieved the main goal of the smart schools. So this is what I have today. I think that we were supposed to have our applications working, but for a reason or another, our applications did not work. So I would really appreciate it. This is my email where you can contact me for any information, and this is my mobile number. I don't know, I think my time is up, almost up. And we can move into the question and answer if you have any questions. And I guess I have something. It says over here that digitization in education has broken borders and has helped students to be exposed to teachers from different regions. How this change would affect students' perspective of learning in four walls? This is a very good question, and we've been talking about over here. And as you can see, okay, as you can see over here, that if we actually think of the student, that your teaching is not, or your learning is not combined within four walls, please tell your students they can go beyond. Smart schools is a very good example how to change the perspective of a confined area for learning. Always search. Always try to use the knowledge that you took from your teacher and convey it beyond your classroom. And this was one of the things that we've been talking about. Okay, do we have further questions? Developing social behavior for students with remote learning. Actually, this is a very good question, and so many people have been talking about early when we talk about remote learning. Well, my capacity as an e-learning manager, we try our best to come up with certain norms when we learn online. For example, we always ask our attendees or our learners to open their cameras. These cameras, either your facial features as an educator with your students will help them get to know each other. There are so many nice tools and applications that will increase the social behavior among students. For example, I can ask them if they are here with me on Zoom or when they're here with me on Teams, I'll ask them, raise your right hand and touch the person who is right next to you virtually. Introduce yourself to that person and start actually to interact with that person. Talk to them. And then when you put them in breakout rooms, they need to introduce themselves, know how to work with each other, set norms for collaboration, which is a very important thing, which we can also get over the social distancing. We are actually making it a virtual social space to get them all together in one place. And thank you very much for attending my brief presentation. I'm sure that there have been so many things that we could have done, but due to time restrictions, I think this actually will do for now. As I showed you earlier, my mobile number and my email address was shown to all of you, and I can still show it for you for a few seconds till my time is up. And I'll be glad to contact or to connect to any of you in case you need any elaboration or anything from me. Thank you very much. It was a pleasure being here with you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Amjad. It was a pleasure having you. Support team, are we offline?
Thank you so much for sharing such valuable inputs. It was a pleasure having you with us today.